I know that we are all coming at this from a lot of different perspectives, and our goal will be to help each of you have a takeaway. And this will be an important beginning to the conversation, not an end or a solution, but one that we hope will be effective and meaningful for each of us. So as David said, my name is Rabbi Adrienne Scott. I have the honor of serving as the Senior Associate Rabbi here at Congregation Beth Israel. And I'm pleased to welcome each of you tonight to our synagogue's Kulanu presentation, Antisemitism on College Campuses. Kulanu means all of us in Hebrew, and it is very appropriate that it is the name of the ADL's program that engages synagogues across the country in the fight against anti-Semitism. While ADL has been tracking anti-Semitism on college campuses for some time, it appears to be getting much worse and has spiked, especially since the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7th. For example, ADL's Southwest region, which covers the southern part of the state from El Paso on the west to Beaumont and Orange on the east, logged 3 times the incidents from October 7, 2023 through February of 2024 than it did from October 7, 2022 through February 2023. What are Jewish college students really facing on campus these days, and how are they and campus officials responding? And especially, how can we help each of them? That's what we're exploring tonight with our guests. Our panelists include Rabbi Kenny Weiss, who has been the executive director of Houston Hillel for 23 years. I can't believe that. And who is a lecturer in Jewish studies at the University of Houston, and Rice University senior Ali Godsell, who graduates from Rice in May of 2025 with majors in history and political science, and who is converting to Judaism. Nicole Harris, who graduates this year from the University of Houston with a major in strategic communication and a minor in religious studies, and who serves as the University of Houston Hillel's Israel engagement intern. And finally, but certainly not least, we have ADL Senior Vice President of National Affairs, Max Sevilla, who oversees the agency's state and local advocacy, campus engagement and advocacy, as well as interfaith and intergroup efforts, and who can speak to what ADL is seeing across the country and what ADL is doing about it. I'd like to start first by asking Ms. Harris what she and other students have been experiencing and facing, particularly on the University of Houston campus, and how they are responding.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so at University of Houston, unfortunately, after October 7th, I stopped wearing my Star of David necklace around campus because the atmosphere was very tense. A lot of my fellow students were scared to tell people that they were Jewish. A friend of mine, she had roommates who didn't know she was Jewish, and she was scared to tell them. Like, she told me that, you know, even though they become friends, they become close, like, there was no way she felt comfortable telling them that she was Jewish because she didn't know how they were gonna respond, especially with everything going on. And the air around campus is just, it's very thick. You know, there'd be messages in our group chat saying, you know, don't go in front of the library today. There's a protest going on, you know, like the pro-Palestinian students are in front of the library or by the fountains or wherever. And you just had to make that extra detour around campus. And, you know, our administration wasn't really doing too much about it. They had the flags at half-mast and the plaque that said that it was for, you know, the victims of October 7th got defaced, and then instead of replacing it, they just took it down. So after that, we kind of were scared to speak up. You know, everyone around campus, it was a really tough time, and it still is to an extent. I started wearing my Star of David again, thankfully, but it's just, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate your response. And now I'd like to ask Ms. Godsell, you are on Rice University's campus. What has been your situation and your experience for Jewish students specifically at Rice?
Yeah, I think Similar to what's happening at UH, there's a large amount of protests, though I will say they're on a much smaller scale, as Rice in general is on a much smaller scale. It's kind of the pro-Palestine social justice crowd, I would definitely think. It definitely poses less of an existential threat, as these protests usually only get around 20 students. They are pretty disruptive, I would say. There's been some interruptions. We have the Baker Institute for Public Policy on campus, and there's been some interruptions when speakers have been here and that sort of thing. In general, I would say that my experience and the experience of my friends as Jews on campus, there's definitely been a sort of coming together in an almost negative and positive sense. We had a really lovely vigil after October 7th that was attended by our administration. So I definitely think our administration is doing a bit better of a job than UH is, at least from what I've heard. They've also put out some statements that are supporting Jewish students, and they're hosting some educational events on the Israel-Palestine issue as well, with some great professors from a multitude of different backgrounds. But in general, I think I've been hanging out with a lot more Jews, and Jews have been hanging out with a lot more Jews, and a lot less of my friends who I'm honestly scared of what they think and what they would think that I'm thinking, and the arguments that we could potentially have, the friends that I would lose. So mostly sticking with kind of a safe group, which is honestly just my Jewish friends, and kind of finding safety in Jewish spaces and that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely no kind of, I can only speak for myself, that perhaps safety isn't necessarily a huge issue, but the emotional trauma that Jewish students have gone through since October 7th has definitely been poignant. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Rabbi Weiss, I imagine that part of your role as the Hillel rabbi is to help students deal with what's happening to them and to work with administrators and other officials, including law enforcement on campus, to ensure that Jewish students are safe and their needs are met. How has what's happening affected your day-to-day role? And what is Hillel doing to answer to anti-Israel, anti-Semitic incidents on campus, and also anti-Israel reactions aimed directly at Hillel?
Okay, those were a lot of questions.
It's a lot of questions.
So with regard specifically to Houston Hillel, which is actually very unique in the Hillel world, we're a multi-campus Hillel. So far this academic year, we've had students on more than a dozen campuses interact with us. And normally, it's a lot of work, but it's certainly manageable for me to maintain connections with administrators on, a half a dozen campuses where we really have meaningful numbers of Jewish students. But since October 7th, I've had to connect with all of these administrators repeatedly, almost all at once. And for the first time, it has been almost overwhelming to have to navigate all of those relationships. You're right about our role with regard to supporting students. Hillel is not an Israel advocacy organization. We do engage in Israel advocacy, but we're a student support organization. And so much of what we've been doing is checking in with students. Certainly we've been providing spaces for them to get together. And perhaps some of you heard about the incident with Rice Pride, where they severed ties with Houston Hillel 3 weeks earlier, the day after Rosh Hashanah. Had October 7th never happened, that trauma would have continued, and we would have still been dealing with that today, because it really did impact the entire Jewish student population at Rice, not just the queer students. October 7th kind of knocked that off of the news cycle. I'm in regular communication with administrators, with police chiefs at both Rice and UH, and so much of my work you never hear about. And I think that's kind of an important thing to know. And that also a lot of the work that administrators are doing, from presidents through student affairs administrators, They're doing a lot of deep thinking. They're doing a lot of work. You don't hear about all of it either. So, just kind of keep that in mind as you're evaluating what you hear through social media, through friends, and in the news.
Great. Thank you so much. Mr. Sevilla, does all of this track with what ADL is seeing? Can you give us some specific examples of anti-Semitic incidents against students on college campuses and tell us what ADL is doing to address this problem?
Thanks for the question, and thanks for having me here. It's really a pleasure being with all of you. And before I answer the question, I want to thank you all for being involved with Kulanu, this being a part of the Kulanu activity. This congregation started with ADL when we began to pilot this effort. The idea is all of us working together with the ADL expertise and content and your drive, your energy, your leadership in order to fight anti-Semitism, something that we started Kulanu specifically about a year and a half ago. It was 19 congregations that helped us start it. You are one of them. So thank you for that. We've grown that program to 250 synagogues throughout the country, and we are looking to double it again to 500 by next year. I think it's been a highly successful experience, certainly for us working with you. So ADL is not an organization that is on campus like Hillel or Chabad on campus or ICC and others. So part of our engagement has been in partnership. And the partnership with Hillel, for example, has been a very important and fruitful one. What's happening on campus is tracking with the incidents of anti-Semitism that we're seeing throughout the country. And a little preview here, in a few weeks, we'll release our 2023 incidents of anti-Semitism audit, and it's, as you would expect, shocking. The number of incidents that we have been tracking has grown exponentially, which is also true of what we're seeing on campus. ADL and Hillel did a survey between 2023 and 24, and over 73% of the respondents told us, the students told us that either themselves or someone they know has faced anti-Semitism over the past year, and that's even before 10/7. And since 10/7, we know that a plurality of Jewish students are afraid for their safety because of intimidation or harassment. And I mean, I speak to many of you throughout the country, and I know that, say, when there was the winter break, that many of you and your family members were having conversations with students going back home about how to stay safe with what's going on campus. So at ADL, we've taken the fight against anti-Semitism on campus as a priority, and yet we understand that there are many entry points, many approaches and perspectives to it, and so it's been really important for us to be value-add. The work being done to fight anti-Semitism on campus is happening from my team, which is advocacy, because that's been our entry point. And while it's true that there are many administrators that are doing good work quietly, we also know that there are many administrators, very many presidents and other leaders on campus that are not doing enough. There is a crisis moment, and leadership is not always taking it as serious as they need when our community, when students, when faculty, and others are facing threats and intimidation and harassment. And so we've built campaigns around no tolerance for anti-Semitism. We are pushing administrators through advocacy, through mobilizing and empowering all of you. We've created an online hub with data and information and education and content, but also templates and information that you can cut and paste and use for you to become advocates in support of students and faculty and others. We've also started the CALL initiative, Campus Anti-Semitism Legal Hotline, in partnership with Hillel and Brandeis and a number of national law firms. So we have brought we've heard from over 500 students with complaints about anti-Semitism in more than 250 campuses. My team has also been meeting with influencers, particularly government officials. Some of that work is actually happening behind closed doors, but you have the Department of Education, the Office of Civil Rights, that has filed on their own over 80 investigations. There's a lot of work that goes to sort of like push the government to conduct that sort of oversight. Talking about oversight, ADL played a really important role in informing the work of the House Education and Workforce Committee when we saw the presidents of MIT, Harvard, and UPenn testify, and we saw that aftermath. There is a lot of power in this room and within the community, and we're looking to empower and energize all of you in order to make the difference that we need at this really alarming moment.
Thank you so much. As you said, and all of us know, one of the reasons that we're here tonight is to see if there's something that we can do as individuals, as a congregation, and truly as an extended community. Certainly, we know as individuals that each of us have a responsibility when we feel safe and secure doing it to counter anti-Semitic and anti-Israel misinformation and disinformation. You received a card when you came in that can help you use 6 simple strategies to respond to all kinds of hateful comments, anti-Semitic or otherwise. Sometimes the people making these comments don't really know what they're talking about or realize how their statements can affect each of us. These strategies can help all of us to respond again when you feel safe doing so. But there are other things that each of us can do. So I'd like to ask each of our panelists first to tell all of us if they want our help, and if so, how that might work for us. So first, Nicole, if you would share.
Yeah, I mean, I would say from the student's perspective, ask us how we're doing. You know, listen to us. If you have a student in your life or anyone, you know, college aged, or just everyone in general, just how are you doing? What have you been up to? How are you holding up? How is the air around, you know, where you're at? Just being there, and, you know, the people who came to me, like my friends and everything after, you know, October 7th and just said, hey, you know, I remember you went to Israel, and I know you're Jewish, you know, how are you doing? What's been going on with you? You know, it really makes all the difference.
Thank you. Allie?
Similar to that, I think reaching out both in a communal sense and also to campus administrations, campus leadership. A lot of times it's really an emotional burden for students to, as much as we would like to advocate for ourselves, we are also students at the same time. That's already enough. It's hard to be a political advocate and a student at the same time, needless to say. So it would be nice if the community itself reached out to campus to help advocate for Jewish students, as well as reaching out in a communal sense in general. We have Hillel, we have Chabad, which are more geared towards undergrads, but I mean, I know there's synagogues close to Rice University campus. I would love to see more outreach towards students who perhaps could use some religion can also be a healer in times of struggle, and especially emotional struggle. And I think community is a great way to help people in times of crisis. But definitely that advocacy is a key factor, especially on campuses where there's a small Jewish population in comparison to the overall population. I mean, I know me and Rabbi Kenny were talking about how it's unfair that, or I was saying that it was unfair that there's only 200 Jews at Rice and there's 3,800, perhaps more than that, non-Jews. And it's really hard to feel like we're being represented and that we're being heard because we're such a small portion. So if we have that support, like Nicole said, from our community and that outreach.
Thank you so much. Rabbi Kenny?
Yeah, you can contact university administrators. Both the University of Houston, Rice University, they really see themselves, especially Rice the past couple decades, as an integral part of the city of Houston. And the reason why this is so important is because what I found repeatedly, year after year, is that university administrators don't appreciate the cumulative impact of trauma upon Jewish students. They usually, it's a little different after October 7th, but for many years prior to that, they would see each incident of anti-Israel activity or anti-Semitism as something isolated to deal with, not realizing that some of these students have experienced things year after year, which really is a burden upon them. So you can tell university administrators that you know what's going on and you want them to know that you're concerned and other people in the community are concerned. And don't just do it once, but do it every time that you hear about something happening. You can get on the Hillel email list. I send out periodic reports about that. You can certainly see things that are in the news or in the Jewish Herald Voice, but to convey that to administrators is very helpful.
And Mr. Sevilla, too.
Thanks. I encourage you to continue to partner with us. As I said, thank you for your leadership through Kulanu. Thank you for going onto the ADL Campus Antisemitism Hub. We are looking to empower you. You've got a lot of leadership. You've been willing to sort of partake and engage. Just to give you an example, the Congress was working on a legislative proposal to highlight the situation of campus anti-Semitism. And many of you and others engaged with ADL, and we overwhelmed congressional offices with over 500,000 calls in support of this proposal. Continue doing that. We'll put information out there. We'll create opportunities for you to engage. That really makes a huge difference. Your voice is more powerful than you know, so continue to use it. We developed this website. We'll continue to update and look for ways to sort of guide you in this energy in order to produce the greatest impact. The other thing is give us your feedback. Tell us what you need. Tell us what you need in order to mobilize in the most effective way, in order for you to show the leadership as alum, as donors, as concerned parents. That's really important. So in a few weeks, we'll put out a report card analyzing how universities are doing. We are looking at 86 universities. Rice is one of them. We've been in touch with the administration. Use these resources. Tell us how to improve them. Let's have a race to the top and push administrators to do better, because ultimately what we want is for everyone to do well. We want Jewish life on campus to thrive. And unfortunately, in this moment of crisis, that is not happening. And it takes all of us in order to make that difference.
Thank you. Thank you. We also have Dr. Rebecca Pinchevsky with us. Dr. Pinchevsky is with Alums for Campus Fairness, and she is going to give us a brief overview as to what her organization does and how we can participate in that. Dr. Pinchevsky, thank you.
Thank you so much. I have props. I need a moment. So, okay. Hi. So I am the Southeast Regional Assistant Director of Alums for Campus Fairness. We are an organization that focuses on activating and engaging alumni to counter anti-Semitism and anti-Israel activity on college campuses. So I am here to help everyone here understand how you can be a part of helping and supporting our students and our people on the ground who work with our students. Alums for Campus Fairness does not work on campus. We do not work directly with students. I am thankful that we have people like Rabbi Weiss and like all of the great Chabad organizations, Hillel organizations, Students Supporting Israel, a lot of great organizations on campus that are working with students. We work with alumni like you, and also parents and grandparents if you have children in college or grandchildren in college or a great nephew. You can join our organization and raise your voice. So I'll tell you how it works. So my parents, for example, my mother went to Brooklyn College, my father went to Cooper Union. Anybody go to Brooklyn College? Before or after open enrollment? So that's a very big thing for my mother, that it was before open enrollment. All my life I knew that. I didn't know what it meant until recently, but it was very important to her. But anyway, so they're signed up as alums of Cooper Union and Brooklyn College, so they get notified of any incidents that happen on campus. Did you guys hear about what happened at Cooper Union a few months ago? Yeah, that was pretty tough. So if you didn't hear, Cooper Union is a small engineering and arts college in New York City, very terrific school, and their anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian protesters were harassing Jewish students to the point that they were locked in a library. You probably saw the video. Things like that are going on. Our students here are dealing with things like that on a regular basis. So my parents then get notified of what's happening at Brooklyn College and what's happening at Cooper Union and what they can do about it. And I want each of you so I noticed that on this card, we're number 1 here, where it says, what do you commit? Number 1 is join Alums for Campus Fairness. So I'll talk to you for a moment about how that works. And basically, you can get notified of what's happening on campus where you went to school, or if you have relatives, or if you're a faculty member. So these were out front. It is a guide for alumni activism. On the back is our website. You can go to our website. On the table in front, there's also a QR code, which you can just join you can scan that with your phone. It brings you to the sign-up page. Essentially, once you join Alums for Campus Fairness, puts you in a position, and you guys, you're going to graduate, so we want you also. And it doesn't matter if you graduated last year, or you're graduating in May, or you graduated 50 years ago. Your alumni voice matters. Now, Rabbi Weiss and our students here, they have a different situation because they live and work every day with people on campus. Their speech and language matters. We've got nothing to lose to say the hard parts out loud because we don't have to go to work with these people. We don't have to sit next to them in class. So we can reach out to the administration. We have committee meetings. We do pressure campaigns. We have print and digital advertising. We have television campaigns. We have a billboard truck in New York City that regularly gets vandalized. That's how you know we're doing a good job. So whether you graduated a year ago, 50 years ago, your voice matters to administrators. That's a way that they mentioned they can support you. We can help, that you can support them. We can help you do that. Each campus is different. We work with our alumni. What I do at USF, University of South Florida, or Tulane is not going to be the same as what my colleagues are doing at Cornell or UCLA. Every campus is different. But you would basically, once you sign up with us, by scanning the QR code and putting in however many universities you're affiliated with, once you sign up, you would get notified incidents, anti-Israel or anti-Semitic activity that happened on campus, and what you can do about it. So we give you the opportunity to be as active or not active as you want, but it will say, here's what's happening, here are things you can do. You can sign this petition, you can share this information. So I would encourage each of you, before you leave here, to sign up and join Alums for Campus Fairness. We have about 55,000 people so far, whether you can sign up as an alum or as a parent, grandparent as a student, grandparent of a student, and that's a way for you to raise your voice to help support our students and our people on the ground and help combat anti-Semitism. I'll be hanging around afterwards if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here, and thanks for sharing these great resources. Now we have some questions. I'll start directing them with one of you, but anyone can follow up and answer them. So I'd like to address this to both of our college students. I'll let you fight over who gets to respond first. But it's a very important and significant question about what can we do with our grandchildren, our college student age children, to teach them how to recognize anti-Semitism and how to respond with using dialogue and not argument. So perhaps you have a personal experience, Nicole or Allie, that you can share, or things that you've learned that has helped you, guide you along the way, even prior to October 7th, just on campus in general.
I want
wanted to ask a follow-up question. How old are these grandchildren?
Doesn't say, just his grandchildren.
Okay. I was just wondering I feel like that helps shape what terms I should put it into.
Younger than college even.
Younger than college. Okay. Yeah, I think in a lot of instances, my friends who grew up Jewish, I converted to Judaism, so I can't directly relate to the experience growing up Jewish, but a lot of people who perhaps went to a Jewish day school, went to a Jewish high school, grew up in environments where they were surrounded by Jews and not surrounded by non-Jews. They perhaps aren't aware of what perhaps it's a shock to go to a school that, like Rice, that has a small Jewish population and see what's out there. There's definitely a impulse, I feel this too, to just hang out with other Jews and that sort of thing because of the things that we see. But I think if we're talking about tools to identify anti-Semitism, things that you'll be surprised to see are things that specifically exclude you for your Jewish identity, exclude you for being a Zionist, exclude you for being pro-Israel. I noticed that there's a proliferation of signs on Rice campus nowadays. They're everywhere you turn. Rice Women's Resource Center and Rice Pride. So these organizations that are supposed to be uplifting queer students, female students. I happen to be both those things, so it's a little unfortunate, but they'll have BDS posters or anti-Israel posters in general. And I think, to me, those read as anti-Semitic because they are shunning people from they're closing off a space that is supposed to be open to everyone. If you're a woman, if you're gay. These are supposed to be open, inclusive settings, and they aren't when you say no Zionists allowed. I think anything that has a double standard, if we criticize Israel for its government actions, but we're not criticizing Iran's for its government actions, or we're lumping blaming Israelis for their government's actions, we wouldn't automatically, I hope, blame Americans for everything that the American government does. I'd hope not. So I would really like it if people didn't do that for Israelis and Jews. And in reality, most college students, they get, unless they're a history major like myself, they get a lot of their education off of Twitter. And there's a lot of catchy things that you can say, and those read as anti-Semitic as well. And I would say how to deal with them is realize that a lot of anti-Semitism and things that people are saying come from ignorance, they come from a lack of education. And a lot of these people, just as you might have grown up in an old Jewish community, a lot of these people grew up not knowing a single Jew. So there's definitely that, and it's hard to open a dialogue, and I myself, I think, struggle with this for sure. So I don't know if I have a solution, but those are definitely ways that you can encounter anti-Semitism and how you can recognize anti-Semitism on campus. I don't know if I said a lot, so.
That's okay. Thank you.
Nicole, I don't know if you have anything else to say.
Yeah, no, that was great. I would say treating people with compassion, even if they're not treating you the same way. I, last summer, was working on campus and had a girl come in who we had both applied for a higher up position, and she got it and I didn't. But I hadn't really spoken to her much outside of that. And she comes up to me, and we were having a conversation. She saw me working at the front desk, and somehow it came up that I was Jewish, and I had a Jewish friend with me as well that was there. And she goes, "Oh, well, I'm German, so," and then salutes. And yeah. And in that moment, I really didn't know how to respond. One, because what was that? It took me a little bit to process it. And also because this is someone who I'd gone up against in a position like for a promotion, and she had gotten it and I hadn't. And I was like, well, why would they pick someone like that over me, you know? And I had to take a step back and I had to really, think about it for a bit. And I was like, maybe she just hasn't really encountered a lot of Jewish people in her life. And she just thought that would be funny because we kind of didn't really know how to respond in that moment. We lived in like an awkward laugh, and she kind of left because I was working at that moment. I was behind the desk. And I spoke to one of my supervisors about it. And I was like, I really don't know why she would do that. And my supervisor, she said, well, maybe she's just uneducated. Talk to her, see, because me personally, I didn't want to talk to her ever again. That was it. That was it for me. I was like, yeah, no, I see the type of person you are. I don't want to talk to you ever again. But, my supervisor said, give her a chance, talk to her, see, and just, I had a talk with her and I was like, hey, what you said, that was pretty offensive. I know you meant it as a joke, and I'm also German on my grandmother's side, and my mom's mom, and you didn't have to do that. You really didn't. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't think about it in the moment. I hadn't really met anyone before who was Jewish, and my friends, we joke about it all the time, and I didn't really think of how that would hurt the person behind it. And I said, yeah, there's a person behind that. There's someone you have to talk to. So in that moment, I had to make the decision. Should I talk to her? Should I just let it go? Should I have this hatred for her in my heart? And I just, at the end of the day, I had to treat her with compassion, even though I really didn't want to. So I would say treat people with compassion and face that anti-Semitism head on. Sometimes talk to people, see what the motive was behind what they had to say. You never know.
Great. Thank you both so much for sharing. Yeah, Mr. Spia, go ahead.
Thanks. Let me give you a couple of field resources. One, the ADL website under our campus tab has information directed to students, including 100 different actions, initiatives, efforts that the student can take in order to address the anti-Semitism that he or she may be facing. Two, we partner with an organization called Project Shema. What they do is really interesting. They have these incredibly effective approaches to engaging in the progressive space in ways that, using language and common understanding, there's like level setting in order to have productive conversations about anti-Semitism and about Israel. And we've been working with Project Shema for a couple of years. Highly successful program. If you haven't come across it, I encourage you to look into it. We also, I'm happy to offline, there are a number of organizations that are doing bystander training. So the student, the son or daughter may witness anti-Semitism happening around the person, and there are techniques and tactics in order to support the victim and be part of a solution. Unfortunately, this is work that I came across in working very closely in support of the Asian American community during the time of the pandemic. And again, unfortunately, at these times of crisis and need, these programs are really relevant. And a couple of years later, I think that these are programs relevant to the Jewish community. I would be happy to make introductions.
Thank you so much. Rabbi Weiss, question for you regarding, have you organized and or hosted all of the academic leaders, president, deans at Hillel to address the current anti-Semitic surge? And if so, was there interest in what came about from it, and how do you continue to engage in those leaders?
I'm sorry, the beginning of the question was, have I?
Hey, yes.
Have I hosted?
Have you hosted any of them at Hillel?
That's what I thought I heard. No. I have not brought together various university administrators at Hillel. I have met with all of the university administrators, sometimes individually, sometimes in groups. At Rice University, for example, I was in the room with the president and all of the vice presidents right below them. There are lots of different administrators that do lots and lots of different things that we engage at different times. We have brought together Karen Tamper Rosenau, who's a professor at the University of Houston and I have brought together Jewish faculty at the University of Houston main campus and UH Clear Lake. And we've had a number of meetings and created a space for communicating with each other that has been very, very helpful.
Great. There's a question about how to go about contacting university administrators and how do we find their names and contact information. So perhaps we can get that from you and then we can send it out to those who are here who have registered so we can let them know.
president@uh.edu, president@rice.edu.
Thank you. Wow, amazing, amazing. So there are quite a few questions. I'm just going to open this up to all of you because it's the topic of tonight and it's an important ongoing issue. I know in the congregation tonight we have parents of current college students, we have parents of soon-to-be college students, and the question is, what can we do to help ensure a safe and comfortable environment for our kids who are going onto a campus? And how, for those who are about to start the college selection process, how do you go about finding the best place or the right place for a student? So maybe, Mr. Sevilla, we can start with you and go on down the line.
Sure. So I go back to the conversation we've been having. One is, how do you support the college student? How do you engage in improving the conditions on campus? You partner with a lot of the organizations here and others. We each have, I think, an important role to play in dealing with what's happening on campus from ADL's perspective. Is that advocacy, is partnering together in order for you as alum, as a donor, as a trustee, as a concerned parent to be an influencer over those making decisions, because we know that oftentimes they're failing us. They're failing the students, and that's why we're having this conversation. If we weren't concerned about what's happening on campus, because, and then there are a few campuses where things are normal, but that's very few. And where that is not the situation and the condition, we need to engage and we need to be a part of the solution. So as I shared, we have created a lot of materials, easy to use content for you to engage directly with those making decisions. Now, if you've got a son or daughter, a grandson or granddaughter considering going to college next year or the year after, we are producing a report card. We are looking at 86 schools right now in the first version of this product. We are looking at the 30 universities with the largest Jewish population by numbers, the 30 campuses with the largest Jewish community by percentage, the top 30 schools according to U.S. News and Report, and the top 10 liberal arts. And we're looking at things like what's the administration doing in order to fight anti-Semitism? What are the levels of incidence? And we look at a number of them. And then what is Jewish life like? We are considering over 20 different criteria, and then we're giving a grade to these universities. We're doing so in order to put the university administrators on notice, but more importantly, so that they will partner with ADL and others in order to have a race to the top, in order to know that there is room for them to improve and to challenge them, all these 86 universities, and more in the future, for them to do better.
Great, thank you so much.
If you're looking for a school for your student to attend, I think that's safe in the way that the question characterized it. I think it's a quixotic pursuit. I don't even think I would try. So, yesterday I met with a prospective student and parent at Rice University. And I told that person, with regard to Rice, if you're fortunate enough to get into Rice University, just go. It's an amazing university. You could say the same thing about any number of universities if you happen to have a student who is really engaged in a particular academic pursuit at that university, or there's something else going on there that is for them. I also believe that once you get someplace, it becomes your home, you meet people, and that's an important thing to keep in mind also. I think the only caveat that I've been telling parents recently is that if you're the kind of person who wants to stand up and advocate for Israel, then a college that has a relatively small Jewish population might not be the right choice because there aren't a lot of people to stand next to you. And sometimes having somebody stand next to you is really, really important. At our campuses in Houston, I don't know a whole lot of students, based on the totality of Jewish student populations, who are interested in like standing up and advocating for Israel. The other thing that I'll say, is, because it's a bit of a flippant way for me to start the response, is that I've talked to a lot of parents at Rice University who said they chose Rice, right? First their kid had to get in. But they chose Rice because they did their research and there was nothing anti-Semitic or anti-Israel going on at Rice. And there wasn't. And then it changed while their students were there. We're at Stephen F. Austin State University. Nothing goes on at SFA until 2 months ago when the Lumberjanes started as a student organization. Great. Feminist student organization. Every campus should have one, except that their second activity was postcards for Palestine. We just had SJP get established at South Texas College of Law. Nothing was happening there for years and years and years. So it's like kind of like gaming the stock market. You just can't do it. Things will change. Now, I did talk to a student recently who goes to Texas Christian University. And there's a few dozen students there, and I asked very specifically about, anti-Israel stuff, anti-Semitism. Nothing seems to be going on there. Don't know what to tell you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to echo the statement that I would hope that the number one thing that you're looking for in college, if you're have the pleasure of getting into a school like Rice or getting into a top school, that you don't just dismiss it based off of, your perceptions of the political culture on the campus. But I would not disagree. But I have a few...
Please disagree. I love when people disagree with me.
Generally disagreeing. But I think if you're a student who wants to be, like Kenny said, wants to be politically active and wants to be engaged with the Jewish community, I think these are definitely things that you should take into account. So I would say, for example, UC Berkeley is a lot more politically active than Rice. And if your student doesn't want to be around a politically active environment, then don't go to UC Berkeley. I won't. Rice itself has been an apolitical campus up until very recently. You can also definitely tell where campus leans towards. Like, I would guess Texas Christian is probably, I'm not from Texas, but I would guess that they're a little bit more conservative, possibly, than Rice University. Somebody can fact check me. Once again, I'm from New Jersey, so I don't know. So I would look at the Jewish community things that a campus offers. Like, we have Hillel, we have a Chabad, we have those things, but we don't have any political organizations for Israel. We had an SSI, I think it had 2 people in it, and then it died out. So there's not really anybody who's engaging in Israel advocacy. And I think the other part of the question was, how do I protect my student against anti-Semitism? At the end of the day, they're Jewish students. I went to a conference with Hillel International and talked to Jewish students from across different campuses like NYU or Columbia that have had more outright or larger presences of Palestinian anti-Semitic, not necessarily bunching those two together all the time, but anti-Semitic incidents, big protests, that sort of things. And Jewish students have the capacity and the resilience to carve out spaces of community in environments of crisis. And I think if your student is committed to being part of a Jewish community, they will find their way as long as that campus possesses Jewish students. I maybe wouldn't go to, say, BYU or Texas Christian if you want a large Jewish population, I think. somewhere else would probably be a better bet. But look at what organizations they offer, and also, is the administration taking care of their Jewish students? Does their administration take care of students in general? That was a big thing when I was applying to school. It was during COVID, and NYU was not taking care of their students. And that was a big reason I didn't apply there. So kind of putting that criteria, but when it comes to Jewish life and instances of anti-Semitism. But at the end of the day, it's really about what your student values, and don't knock it before you try it, I guess, if you don't really know what's going on at the campus level.
Great, thank you. Cool.
Yeah, so when I was picking a university, it was also during COVID, and I didn't get into my top school, and I didn't really look too far into U of H. I was like, okay, it's very, very affordable. I saw a news article about free tuition for people who make under a certain amount. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I looked, and it was one of the most diverse schools in the nation. And the town that I grew up in didn't have a lot of Jewish people. So to me, my first thought was, oh my gosh, diversity, that means Jewish people are gonna be there. And then I get to U of H, and I've met maybe like 20 Jewish people the whole time I've been there, and I'm about to graduate. So it was a bit of a shocker for me. If I had known then what I know now, I would have reached out to campus groups like, Rabbi Weiss over here, and said, hey, what's the climate like for Jewish students on campus? And, just seeing, how many Jewish students are there? Like, do you have a rough estimate? Or, and just had kind of more of a feel. And I'm not saying if I would have known that, I would have not picked the University of Houston, but, I would have thought a little harder about it, and not just been like, oh, affordable and diverse, that's cool. And at the same time, they were talking about political activism on campus. My first year, there was a BDS movement that came through, and I spoke up at the student government meeting. And when I tell you, I very quickly regretted speaking up at the student government meeting because of how unprofessional they were and how aggressive they were. And one of the members of the Israel on Campus Coalition was in the meeting, and she said she'd never seen anything like it. It was so, like I said, unprofessional, aggressive, and it scared me, honestly. It scared me out of wanting to speak up on campus. So I would say go somewhere where, there is maybe a bigger Jewish community, where there's more people to stand beside you, so you're not scared off like I was. Obviously, I still, as an Israel engagement intern, spoke up when I could on campus, but it very much deterred me from ever participating in student government again or anything of the sort. So I would say just, if you want your student to be safe and protect them and make them feel comfortable on campus, you should maybe look into that. And like I said, speak with the Hillels or the Chabads or whatever organization they have on campus for Jewish students.
Great, thank you. This will be a final question. I'll direct it to you, Mr. Sevilla, and then for anyone else who wishes to answer. How do we distinguish between Jewish hatred of Israel, to hatred of the ongoing killing in Gaza? Many Jews can support Israel and still not like what it's doing. How do they handle all the vitriol aimed at all of us for the actions of Israel's government?
So I would say that the answer is in how the question is posed. Of course, being critical of the Israeli government or Israeli tactics in this war, or being sympathetic to the human rights plight of the Palestinian people, that is human and fair, and we all engage in it, ADL included. When that disagreement with the Israeli government or with tactics of war is manifested against Jewish people for the fact that we're Jewish, or when the demonstration happens across a synagogue because it's a Jewish congregation, then that is anti-Semitic, right? None of us are responsible for what Bibi Netanyahu or the current Israeli government may be doing or not doing. And many of us are in disagreement. There are Jews and non-Jews that are supportive and opponents of the Israeli government and Israeli tactics, etc., when the focus is only on the Jewish community because it's tied to that policy disagreement, and the non-Jews that may have a similar opinion are not faced with this sort of engagement, that is hateful and anti-Semitic. So I would say that the way that the question is posed answers the question itself.
Excellent, thank you. Others? Rabbi?
Yesterday, Allie and I, it was yesterday, right? We were at a lunch lecture at Rice University by, I forget his name.
Dr. Ethan Katz.
This is why you were at Rice and I went to UCSD.
He's at UC Berkeley. Just a quick shout out to the Jewish Studies program at Rice University. They put on a lot of good talks.
Yeah. So anyway, he drew the distinction between critical anti-Zionism and negational anti-Zionism. Critical anti-Zionism is, I don't like the state of Israel and what's going on there. Negational anti-Zionism is, Israel shouldn't exist, period. And he coined those terms, and I think it's really instructive and important for us to think in those terms, because typically what we think when we hear critical anti-Zionism is we think anti-Zionism, right? And the reason why that's problematic is because from where I sit every day, I talk to lots and lots of students and recent alumni who are critical anti-Zionists, but the Jewish community lumps them into simply being anti-Zionist, as the state of Israel shouldn't exist. And I think that it's important to know that distinction, because if we don't keep that distinction in mind, it's to our own peril, because we alienate an increasing percentage of young people, young Jewish people, who not only aren't connecting to Israel, but because of the way that we think of their critical anti-Zionism, they're not even connecting to Judaism. And that's a really, really big deal.
Excellent, great. Allie, Nicole, you don't have to respond, but I want to give you a chance to if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I think you summed it up really nicely, but I think I just wanted to point out what the kind of anti-Zionism we're seeing a lot on campus. I do agree that there's a lot of, from Jewish students I know, it's hard to reconcile supporting something when you see horrible things happen. It's like an emotional gut reaction to reject something in total, especially if you're someone who has not lived as long as other people and are not used, you don't understand that the entire historical context. You just see something bad and gut reaction, I don't support this, how could I ever support this? So I think that's a lot of, I don't want to over assume, but a lot of young Jewish students on campus who associate more with the progressive left and that sort of thing. But I would definitely say that negationist anti-Zionism is the major strain that I see, at least on Rice campus, because most of the people who are anti-Zionist in general, once again, I'm just assuming, I don't think are Jewish, and they don't have an emotional connection to the state of Israel. And a simple solution to something that you don't like is to be like, why can't we just make it go away? So I don't know what my point is with that, but I think there's a deeper kind of, to understand the situation that is happening on campus, I think you have to understand what people are saying and where they're coming from. And the thing is, a lot of these negationist anti-Zionists, I think this is a great definition, they don't realize that that is anti-Semitic. And I think our job is to tell them, is to explain to them how the Jewish community reacts and emotionally feels about statements like, for example, globalize the Intifada from the river to the sea. As Jews, we see that as an existential call for, the mass killing of Israelis, Jews around the world. But the people who are saying these things don't necessarily understand that. And if they do, that's even worse. Yeah, somebody said it. And that's not usually the progressive left people. Social justice people, they're about social justice. They're about accepting everyone, but somehow Jews don't fall into that branch.
Great.
So yeah, I just want to note that I think that we define Zionism differently within the panel, and you may be hearing it in the way that we're discussing it. I think the semantics really don't matter. Oftentimes we are involved in sort of defining anti-Semitism, be it the IRA definition or else. We are all here because we're worried about what's happening on campus, because we're worried about the welfare of Jewish students, faculty, and others. And I think that there is a common understanding and agreement that what's happening is unacceptable and that we need to be a part of the solution.
Great, thanks. Nicole, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was that joke that a Zionist Jew and an anti-Zionist Jew walk into a bar and the bartender says, "No Jews." You know, we have to, at the end of the day, we all have to stand together. It's, you know, we have differing opinions. You know, I may have a different opinion than different people on this panel. I may have a different opinion than, you know, some of my friends, some of the Jewish students at U of H. But at the end of the day, you know, we need to have these discussions and we need to just, you know, learn that people can think different things as long as it's not, how do I word this? Yeah, a calling for the Jews, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, I had a friend about 2 years ago maybe who, upon finding out that, you know, I was gonna go to Israel, cut me off. And I considered this person to be one of my best friends. And, you know, the response was, well, you know, you support the killing of Palestinians, so I can't associate myself with you. And I was like, wait a minute, we didn't have any kind of discussion on that. You just assume things, you know, just because I'm going to Israel that I support Palestinian people dying. Like, where is this coming from? And they didn't want to have that conversation. They just were over me, you know, they were done. And I think having these conversations with people and seeing that everyone has a differing opinion, it's really important. And I encourage everyone to, even if you think someone has the complete opposite opinion of you and you want nothing to do with them, like I said earlier, have a chat.
Great, thank you. Thank you all so much. We could go on for many, many hours, but we'll conclude at this point, and hopefully our panelists will be around for a few moments so we can visit a little bit afterwards. Finally, what's very important when we are inspired and empowered is to all leave with an action item. So I would like for you to speak to the person next to you, maybe someone you live with, know very well, or maybe another family member or friend, and to talk about what you are going to do individually or as a family unit to fight anti-Semitism and hate, whether it be on campus or really anywhere. Then you should write it on the second card we have given you that has a QR code on it that will take you to a page on ADL Southwest website with resources for you. Also, if you have any questions or need help, we'd be very happy to have you reach out to our Social Justice Committee co-chairs, Lisa Stone. Lisa, wave for all of us. And Dina Marks, thank you so much. They're here tonight, as you can see, and are available for any questions following our program. And or you can also reach out to them through their email addresses, which are on the ADL Southwest web page. And you can also get through the QR code. Thank goodness for these QR codes. I want to thank you all once again for being here tonight, for participating in Kulanu, and for helping all of us fight anti-Semitism and hate. Thank you all.
Thank you.